1, 2, is this on?
Anyone can have an off day in wrestling, so almost every talent has had a match they disliked.
In the early 2000s, they would set up a TV and catering and air Raw the next day before the SmackDown tapings. I was hanging in the back of the room when the Raven match came on, and I'll never forget Steve Austin laughing in disbelief and throwing his baseball cap against the wall in protest of how rotten it was.
Be it due to a botched finish, bad performance, equipment malfunctions, time constraints, or a lack of cooperation from their opponent.
Ted Jr. blows by me, looks at Vince, and says, "Where is that referee? He was trying to fuck on me."
We'll have examples of all these and more today, as we highlight 10 WWE wrestlers who hated their own match.
I was viscerally angry. Could it have been better? In my mind, yes.
Kurt Angle's 2005 feud with Booker T is remembered more for the storyline than the wrestling. Kurt has spoken at length about how much he hated stalking Book's wife Charmel, but at least when it came down to the in-ring portion, Angle and Booker could tear it up. This was supposed to happen during their sole pay-per-view match at Judgement Day 05. The two men were on their way to a great contest. However, just as things began to kick into high gear, the bout ended prematurely following a cradle.
Booker T, look at this small package. Did he get it? Did he get it? I don't know. He got it.
Kurt wasn't happy with the early ending since they had much more planned. Angle revealed this in an interview with Title Match Wrestling.
And Booker and I were upset because that match would have been one of the greatest matches of all time. It was a 5-star match, and we probably had 12 minutes left in that match, and it got cut short. But it was a tough pill to swallow because Booker and I knew how good that match could have been. And unfortunately, we weren't able to do it again because the program ended. Booker beat me twice, 2 in a row. There wasn't a third match. So unfortunately, Booker and I never got to have the third match. And unfortunately, Booker and I didn't have that 5-star match we wanted because it ended short.
On the Kurt Angle show, Booker voiced his displeasure with how things went, since he and Kurt never got to have that knockdown, drag-out pay-per-view match they wanted.
I just wish we could have finished our story, you know.
Oh, God,
Kurt and I, we was on the verge of having a classic match, and Charles Robinson, the referee, screwed it up by making the 3 count. The one thing I remember in that match was when he counted 3, the way you looked at him and the way I looked at him.
We were both shocked, like, holy shit, they called the wrong finish, and you were celebrating. And I was like, this guy improvises, man.
I had to go into it. I'm like, I'm happy, but I was so mad. Still to this day, every time I see Charles Robinson, I remind him of that. I swear to God, still to this day. This many years later, every time I see him.
Fortunately, somebody didn't get their shoulder up, and Vince congratulated me when I came to the back, but I told him, I said, I messed up because I thought that was the finish. If I would have known 2 or 3 moves prior to that, I wouldn't have made that mistake.
Anytime Angle wrestled Chris Benoit, it was always magic. But there was one match the two had which Benoit wasn't a fan of. We're talking about their barn burner at Unforgiven 2002. Everyone seemed to love the match apart from Chris, who didn't think it was as crisp as he and Kurt's other encounters. The bout received rave reviews backstage and from fans, with many believing it to be a match of the year candidate. However, it wasn't to Benoit's liking. Angle explained on his podcast why Chris didn't approve of the contest.
He supposedly didn't think it was that great. So do you remember Benoit being upset with the match? What do you think, Kurt?
Yeah, you know what? When you're a perfectionist like Chris Benoit, sometimes things didn't go the way he wanted them to go. They weren't smooth. They were a little rough and edgy. But that's what's good about a wrestle match, because in a real fight, you're going to have choppiness, and you're not going to have be able to go smooth the whole time. Things are going to get rough and rugged.
In his 4th book, No is a 4-Letter Word, Chris Jericho describes an abysmal 3-minute match he had with Raven from the February 26, 2001 Raw.
It was one of those nights, and even though we'd had great matches in the past, that time it just didn't click and was embarrassingly bad.
Right off the bat, each man was late on 2 Irish whip spots.
The King and APA. I guess APA behind me, and I don't care who I write.
The finish saw Tori interfere on Raven's behalf, dressed as the Black Ninja. However, Jericho didn't do much to fend her off. Tori then hit Raven with a 2x4, though Raven had to loudly yell for her to do so. The announcers claimed Tori couldn't see who she was hitting, but her eyes were visible the whole time. Perhaps something the wrestlers called in the back just didn't end up happening. Both Tori and Raven didn't like working with each other, because Raven regularly chewed her out for not being in the right place.
If I remember right, getting wrong information, I could never be in the right place at the right time working with him.
Chris won thanks to a lion salt that connected with Raven's knee pads.
In the early 2000s, they would set up a TV and catering and air Raw the next day before the SmackDown tapings. I was hanging in the back of the room when the Raven match came on, and I'll never forget Steve Austin laughing in disbelief and throwing his baseball cap against the wall in protest of how rotten it was, and was forced to deal with the roasting like a real man. So I did the most honorable thing a real man could do. Snuck out the back door with my lion's tail between my legs before anybody spotted me.
Also in his fourth book, Jericho spoke about the WrestleMania 32 match between Dean Ambrose and Brock Lesnar. Chris noted how Ambrose's pitches for the match kept getting shot down, including taking an F5 on thumbtacks.
I didn't figure he'd go for it, but I knew Dean wanted to try to get them approved because he had planned to use them in his street fight against Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 32 a few months earlier. However, Brock wasn't too keen on the concept and the idea was quickly dropped.
Dean was happy to be squashed, but wanted it to be done in insane and spectacular fashion. The problem for Ambrose was that Brock didn't want to plan or do anything crazy. Meanwhile, the higher-ups were more interested in other bouts on the show. There was already a gimmick match using ladders, while the big stunt of the night was saved for Shane McMahon versus Undertaker. The build had fans thinking we were in for a hardcore brawl with dangerous weapons. However, come bell time, barely any were used, and the match fell flat. It certainly didn't feel worthy of the biggest show of the year. Dean also criticized Vince for how much Ambrose was made to look like a goofball in the lead up to WrestleMania. That's despite McMahon saying it was a serious feud.
Mick Foley's giving me his barbed wire bat that I'm never going to get to use. And I was like, why can't we use it? They're like, oh, blood. I'm like, but also like, you're not, I also was thinking in my head, I'm like, they're afraid to yell at Brock. We have one scheduled rehearsal at like 11 p.m. Saturday night, the day before the show. But we end up not even doing that. Because he's like, we don't need to do that. And he just goes, I mean, I don't think we need all that stuff. I mean, all that extra gimmicks and stuff. I mean, it's a simple story. I mean, look, we got a suplex city, then you get your hands on a weapon, you make a comeback.
All in all, Ambrose vs. Lesnar wasn't a priority, especially since the Beast didn't seem too interested.
I went to the ring that night pretty pissed off. Went out there with not much of a plan, so to speak, I felt like I was pulling teeth. Like artistically, Brock didn't want to do anything, and I was met with laziness.
During an Inside the Ropes live show, Brock's advocate Paul Heyman responded to Ambrose's claims. Heyman stuck up for Lesnar while speaking mostly in character, but perhaps we can read between the lines of what Paul said.
Did you see his performance on the Stone Cold podcast? Did it piss off Steve Austin? Did it piss you off too? And you think actually he didn't come into this match with Brock Lesnar with the same attitude?
Lyra Valkyria's no DQ encounter with Becky Lynch at SummerSlam 2025 was similar to our last entry in that other matches on the show also implemented multiple weapons.
It was very hard to come up with some unique ideas.
Knock the steps off. And we are using the box. Right, okay, so maybe we don't do that.
This was their feud ender following a 4-month rivalry, so they wanted to close it out on a high.
I think I'd already lost the battle with that one before I went through the curtain. I just didn't switch on. I felt a lot of pressure. I'm always able to live in the moment, and for that match, I just couldn't.
Becky and Lyra had to get creative with their spots, but thinking outside the box using zip ties was ultimately their downfall. That's because Lyra became free from them at one point. She was nervous before the bout, so didn't think to improvise, believing the cameras could have missed the zips breaking. Therefore, Lyra put her hands back in position like nothing had happened.
Is she out of those?
Yes! They're still
she gotta just fucking get out of them. They're loose. Then tell her just that they're off.
What if the cameras didn't catch that? If they missed that, then it's like she was zip tied a second ago and now she's not. Whereas if I slip them back on and hope the cameras didn't see it, same match.
Once it was time to break free for real, Lyra had trouble removing the zip ties.
I couldn't get them off, so I had to crawl into the ring and get someone to cut them.
By the end, Lyra and Becky were deviating away from the match's script. The bout subsequently lasted 10 minutes longer than it was scheduled for. Neither woman was pleased with how things went.
I'm not exactly sure what's happening.
Fuck.
Sometimes it just doesn't go the way you see it in your head, and no one ever has the perfect streak, and you have to just get knocked down and get back up again. So got Raw on Monday, I'm gonna have to just fucking get back up and be okay.
Despite Lynch's experience, having such a difficult match like that is still hard to take. The agents and wrestlers tried to comfort both talent, but there was no changing how badly they felt.
Oh, she's gonna be so mad when she comes back. Sorry, it's not good enough.
Another match featured on Unreal that didn't go as planned was the men's Money in the Bank match in 2025. LA Knight would come up short on the night, but was still going to have a big moment for the finish. Here he would battle for the briefcase with eventual winner Seth Rollins.
LA Knight knocks Seth off. Holy shit, he's gonna fucking do it. Yay! Boom, grab him. What the fuck? Pull him down. Boom, he gets on his knees. Stop, boom, fuck you, and Seth.
Once it came time to go home, LA didn't follow what had been called in the back prior. This meant he didn't get that last grasp push for the win, with the crowd cheering for him.
Tell LA Knight some urgency. Let him come in. Let him just get going the ring. It's not what we talked about.
We thought we were going to have Seth and LA face to face battling over who was going to pull that Money in the Bank case down. The suspense and the drama that creates. We lost that.
Seth and the bookers were unhappy with the finish. They felt the planned ending would have received a much better reaction.
I was viscerally angry. Could it have been better? In my mind, yes.
Meanwhile, a dejected LA received an earful from a disappointed Triple H. Hunter felt it was a missed opportunity for Knight to shine.
The end of that thing was built for you. We've got a really good story there. We just missed the moment to put the fire on him.
Let's circle back to another Becky Lynch SummerSlam match. We're referring to her big return in 2021 after a year off. Just like Lyra 4 years later, the man's opponent was also driven to tears on this night, that being the EST Bianca Belair. The reason is because Becky defeated her in 26 seconds, ending Belair's 4-month title reign.
Taking care of business with a manhandle slam. Cover on Belair. Lynch makes the title.
This was done because the higher-ups wanted to turn Lynch heel, so winning like this would upset the fans enough to boo her. Bianca described the quick loss as the lowest point of her career. She was particularly embarrassed because her parents were in the audience. In her book, Becky described the immediate aftermath, where she assured Belair of the bigger picture coming out of their feud.
When I came back, I saw Bianca crying. Understandably. She felt like her momentum had been killed. Not that she would sell it, though. She's a real-life champion and passed it off as being happy for me. I tried to reassure her that I would do right by her, but she didn't know me and had no reason to believe me. I would have to prove it to her.
Two of CM Punk's main rivals during his time in WWE ECW were John Morrison and Elijah Burke. Punk has never had much good to say about Burke, with Punk referring to Elijah as his least favorite opponent.
Does anybody even remember Elijah Burke?
Yeah, the Pope.
Yeah? Oh, he was terrible. He's absolutely the worst. Absolutely the worst. Talk about a diva. Ooh.
Oh, watch Burke hit the ball. Very impressive.
In 2007, Punk wrestled a series with Morrison, but he only liked their rubber match on television. That's because they had more time and leeway to work how they wanted. That's compared to the 8-minute matches they had on 3 straight pay-per-views. For that reason, Punk hated these bouts.
Once again, it was one of those things where they looked at John, they looked right through me, and they said, John's our guy. He's going to be the man, but I thought I was way more ready than he was. And then me and him proceeded to have some of the worst garbage, if you even call them matches, on pay-per-views. I think we had 3 pay-per-views straight where it was just, we were the victim of time constraints and just about anything else, and both of us being young and stupid and trying to cram 15 minutes of stuff in 5 minutes, and the matches weren't good. They weren't good at all.
The 6-man tag match featuring Cody Rhodes and Daniel Bryan from the June 17, 2011 SmackDown is infamous. Not necessarily because of the botched finish, but rather the aftermath, which has become a legendary wrestling meme story. Sin Cara had messed up a few spots before the bout ended early, because of a screw-up between the referee and Ted DiBiase Jr.
And we're like 4 minutes into this match. It's a 2-segment match.
Ted kicked out, but the ref looked like he was gonna count 3 no matter what.
In fairness, he did kick out, but because your referees can't block the hard cam, he wasn't in position, so they were both kind of right in this situation. Yes.
What a nightmare.
Yeah.
Cody considers it the worst match he's ever had, but what happened in Gorilla afterward was absolutely hilarious.
So I roll out and I'm thinking, hey, I'm talking to Stu who's right here, and I said, why don't we go get some heat on him? Let's salvage this.
Sure,
let's go get. But by the time I get done saying, hey, why don't we go? He's already stormed to the back. He's literally not there.
We come into the grill area, and there is Vince standing up, headset off, and right before he can say anything to me, Ted Jr. blows by me, looks at Vince, and says, where is that referee? He was trying to fuck on me. Vince just real slowly put his headset back on, sat down, and we never talked about the worst match that happened ever again.
Throughout his career, The Undertaker often got paired against questionable wrestlers, to say the least. Even though deep down, the real Mark Calloway wasn't always best pleased with these opponents, you'd never know it on screen since he remained professional and in character. It was rare to see him lose his patience, but Taker couldn't hide his frustration facing Heidenreich in a casket match at the 2005 Royal Rumble. The finish featured a mistimed DDT and a very low chokeslam.
What goes on? Chokeslam!
You could see how mad Taker was following the chokeslam, since Heidenreich barely got up for the move. The Phenom shook his head following a botch-filled encounter. encounter.
Undertaker walks through the curtain. Does he just shoot you the death stare right away?
Yeah, not pretty. Yeah, it was terrible.
Now, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out our similar video on 10 wrestlers who left WWE under insane circumstances. Hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time.